Happy Sunday, War Report family. Your boy C-Dub here. Now that the portal window is closed, we take a look at who all has left the Auburn football program versus who has signed with Auburn football. Discuss needs, if there are any still outstanding, and what the spring looks like for this team. Also, we discuss the new JUCO ruling as well. This is the weekend tailgate.
This is the Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by Golden's Cast Iron. C-Dub, Ike Jones, Be Will, Mike G. You are now listening to
The Weekend Tailgate here, brought to you by the good folks over at Golden's Cast Iron. If you guys need to do a little working out, grilling out, chilling out, make sure you head over there, goldenscastiron.com/WR. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off of their weights. $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills when you use code TWR. We appreciate them for continuing to support what we got going on here at the War Report. If you want to support us more, go ahead and get that green name gang. Y'all know we are getting it in office hour style, and got plenty more film review coming for y'all. We've already done a little bit of Jackson Arnold. I got some Eric Singleton coming for y'all. I got both of our new offensive tackle acquisitions. I got film on all of them. So make sure you get your membership up to date if you want to be a part of all of that great content that we got going up for the Green Name Gang. If you are Green Name and you want to help somebody else, you can give them a free month of membership on you, and we appreciate that support. Also, big shout out to the folks over at Vintage 2298 at 2298 East University Drive. They're serving up good eats, and you know it is. I don't know what y'all. Caesar, this is just an aside. Did your family do the whole Black Eyed Peas for New Year's thing? Is that a thing? Okay.
No.
Yeah,
no.
my
mom did that. She grew up in that, but when we came along, that wasn't a thing.
Yeah, my mother-in-law is very big on that. They don't serve Black Eyed Peas over there, but if you want to get a good New Year's meal and you need something, go to Vintage. Maybe you can just go over there to the butcher shop.
Spirit, Ike? That was heavy on your spirit.
Yeah, man. You can go over there to the butcher shop maybe and get yourself something to put on the grill and have a little fun there during your New Year's celebration, man. So shout out to them and shout out to everybody who is here on a Sunday holiday season. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday season, and as we continue the season and do it a little football talk, you know.
Yeah, man. I did not have a good holiday season. I was actually spent the holiday sick, but I'm better. I'm better now that the holiday is over with. Just in time. Let's talk football, though.
Yeah,
the portal window has closed. What that means is that Auburn does not have to worry about any other players jumping into the portal until after spring, when the portal opens up back in April. However, Auburn can continue to host people in the month of January for those who have entered the portal or are already in the portal. Obviously, teams that still have bowl games to play and are in the playoffs, they are expecting to see guys exit their program once their season concludes. But as far as the drama as to who all is leaving the Auburn program, that should have now subsided with the portal window now closed.
Thankfully, for now, we don't have to continue to keep talking about, do you think such and such is leaving? No, they're here.
They're here. They're here. They're here. So we can talk about, and I guess we can split this up. Like we can discuss offense in terms of who has all departed versus who has entered into the program. And I think you have a graphic that you're still putting together for us.
I am. I'm gonna have that in like 35 seconds. Don't put me on no clock though, because
okay,
I'm gonna
not gonna do that. I'm not gonna do that
then.
I think some of people's biggest fears. We can do this while you get that together. Some of people's biggest fears in terms of who was all entering or could enter the portal. Guys like a Cam Coleman, guys like a Perry Thompson, even Malcolm Simmons' name got thrown out there in the past several weeks. Those guys are still on board.
Right.
So obviously that's something Auburn fans can look forward to with this wide receiver room, which we'll talk a little bit more in detail about when we talk about some of the additions as well as people who have exited the program. Obviously, there are some surprises in terms of who all has exited the program. I think for me, I think it goes without saying who's the biggest surprise in terms of who entered the transfer portal. He sits atop this list, actually. That is Walker White sitting there. He actually just recently announced his new team. It was speculated for a while that he would be committing to Baylor, and he made it official on yesterday. Made some interesting comments, too, about
Mhm.
having a good understanding of QB development, which obviously has been taken as a shot at his former team and former head coach in Hugh Freeze. Ike, your thoughts about the biggest, in your opinion, the biggest surprise in terms of who has entered the transfer portal on the offensive side of the ball?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is the biggest surprise. Definitely was Walker White. I didn't, and we had a fairly healthy debate about this between myself, Mike, and B. Will about whether or not it made a lot of sense for Walker White to hit the portal. I didn't feel like it made a ton of sense. And again, I mean, I can't say what that young man should and shouldn't do with his life. I just didn't understand the decision from the standpoint of uh, he was essentially he moved from a situation where he was going to be sitting on the bench to a situation where he's likely going to be sitting on the bench. He moved to a situation where he was likely going to be quarterback number 2 in his new place from a place where he was likely going to be quarterback number 2 coming into the spring. So, all of that aside, I didn't understand it from that standpoint. I also didn't understand the timing. But if he didn't trust the plan of what was going to happen to get him from the bench to the field, then that makes a lot more sense. And I understand, hey, listen, I might be QB2 in either of these scenarios, but at least I can see the plan that's going to allow me to get from playing back up to out there on the field, right? Cool. Understand that completely. Not going to be mad about that. But Walker White, the biggest surprise. Um, Second biggest surprise, I guess, on this list would have been maybe Sam Jackson, but I also understand the decision for Sam Jackson. Like, I think maybe it was just kind of
I
like a
get it.
foregone situation for Sam Jackson, where it's like, I don't know that you're ever going to see the field at Auburn. And unless you wanted to be the emergency quarterback that's going to be out there basically running the scout team, I don't see the path for you to even have a role really on this team, right? Like, once you go and you get Eric Singleton as a versatile guy that can play outside, inside. I don't know where the snaps come for Sam Jackson, because in the slot you're done, right? Like Eric Singleton, Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane, slot finished. Like you're number 4 on that list
Really
out the
talented guys,
gate.
too.
Yeah, out the gate you are number 4 on that list, right? And on the outside, you don't have the size to compete. And if we're just talking from, pure wide receiver skills, you went and picked up again Eric Singleton, who can play out there, Horatio Fields. You got a couple of freshmen that are coming in, plus what you already had in Cam Coleman and
Aaron Thompson.
Perry Thompson out there on the outside. Where are the snaps coming for Sam Jackson, right? And so not necessarily that it surprised me. It just, I guess in my mind, I was like, did he graduate? I didn't even know what Sam Jackson's eligibility was. So when he hit the transfer portal, I was like, it was more so like, he still got eligibility left? Then,
Yeah, he
oh,
does. He
Sam
does.
Jackson's not going to still be on the team, right? And plus, he came here because his friend was the quarterback. Like, let's be clear, his old high school buddy was the quarterback. So that was more so what led to that decision than anything else in my mind. So I guess that's the biggest surprises, if you can say that, from the offensive side as far as who left. I expected EJ Harris to leave. I expected Percy Lewis.
I expected him to leave.
I just didn't. Again, he was another guy. I was like, more so, he had another year eligibility. That's surprising. Then I expected him to stay at Auburn. Cam Brown, I knew he was out of there.
Mm-hmm.
Micah Riley, knew he was out of there. Caleb Burton. Listen, I don't take victory laps on stuff much because I don't like being right about certain things. I told people before this season started, I don't know how Caleb Burton sees the field this year. I don't know how he sees the field. People are like, there's no Caleb Burton. There's no way.
He
Caleb
had 2
Burton,
catches.
yeah, in garbage games. Like I did not see a path for Caleb Burton to play on this for a lot of reasons. And people are just calling me crazy. And I'm just like, I don't know, y'all. Like, I don't think it's gonna happen for him this year at Auburn.
Yeah.
And it didn't, and again, that's not me trying to like toot my own horn. I trust the information that I have about this situation. I don't think Caleb Burton's he ain't gonna make it out there at Auburn, based upon what is in front of him out here because he was too much of a tweener. He wasn't big enough to really play outside like they wanted somebody at his size. And then he wasn't really twitchy or fast enough to be a slot guy like they wanted to. Good receiver,
Right.
solid possession guy, doesn't fit what Coach Hugh Freeze wanted to do from a wide receiver perspective. Once you really turn the film on and you look at what he does, he was just kind of a guy who was solid, but not game changing. And they needed game changers at the wide receiver. He wanted guys who were absolutely game breakers at wide receiver. I don't get that from Caleb Burton. That doesn't mean Caleb Burton isn't a good, and I've always said that. I think he's a talented receiver. He's got good hands. He actually runs routes well. He just doesn't have game breaking speed. He's not twitchy, and he's not overly he's not big. So there's not a thing that separates him from when you're looking at Malcolm Simmons and the speed and you never saw Caleb Burton and said to yourself, man, just get the ball in his hands and let him go make a play. That is never going to be Caleb Burton. He's going to be a guy who he is what Robert Lewis would be if Robert Lewis wasn't faster. He ain't particularly great at it. He's solid at a bunch of stuff and gonna be where he needs to be when he needs to be there. But Robert Lewis, I think, was just a little bit faster than him, and so that's why he's gonna get more snaps.
My theory with Caleb Burton was obviously he was one of the first guys that Hugh Freeze got out of the portal when he got to Auburn.
Mhm.
And obviously his approach to the portal has changed since he's been at Auburn. And you're seeing the Horatio Fields, you're seeing the evolution of the type of receiver, the type of guy that Hugh Freeze is going after now versus when he first got to Auburn and was essentially drinking from a fire hose trying to get guys into the program, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of night and day different than the type of receivers he brought in those first 2 portal cycles. And I'm thinking you're seeing a departure from that. And I think for those guys, unfortunately, as Hugh Freeze is beginning to figure his roster out and get the type of players and athletes that he needs in to run his offense, you're seeing these guys kind of finding less of a place for themselves. The Sam Jackson one was a bit odd to me. I'm not even gonna lie to you, Ike. That was an odd pickup. And I just don't know if that was just a numbers thing. I think if you had to take a guess, you just didn't know that Malcolm Simmons was going to be Malcolm Simmons year 1. So you needed a guy, Sam Jackson, who could fill in that role, perhaps.
Right.
So in retrospect, we it's easy to question that pickup, but you just didn't know. I thought Malcolm Simmons would probably take a red shirt in year 1, but he came on the campus and was him from the moment from the jump. So your thoughts about Walker White's comments though?
I mean, I don't know that I think he phrased that well enough that you could argue your way towards that's not a shot at Hugh Freeze.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand anybody who feels like it is a shot at Hugh Freeze, right? And I think it's disingenuous to try to say that you can't see why people would be making that. But it's also disingenuous for someone to say it's absolutely it's left up to interpretation. Yeah. And however you interpret that has to do with kind of who you think Hugh Freeze is or what you think the real motivation for Walker White is. And this is because let's say this. It wasn't as direct as a former basketball player who left the program saying, I got sold a dream, right? Like that was a very direct, you're talking about the coach and the people who recruited you thing. what Walker White said left it was like, oh, well, I mean, that's a general statement. Anybody who wanted to go to any program would want to know what the plan is. Like that's yeah, you could interpret it that way. I think when you're asking about what attracted you to a specific place, you could interpret it that way. It's like, well, some of the other programs I was talking to didn't sell me a clear vision, so Baylor did. So I chose Baylor over them, right? And so it doesn't necessarily have to speak to Auburn specifically.
Yeah.
So without talking to Walker White specifically about that, I will allow that to remain ambiguous in that way because I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Sure. And obviously you referenced you guys keep referencing a player that played in Auburn basketball last year. It was
Yeah,
a
I mean,
freshman.
I heard rumor about like this guy.
Um
So
yeah. So I'm not going to look into that too much
yeah,
because yeah, I don't it doesn't jump out in my mind as
right.
anything special or noteworthy. So we'll move on. Biggest pickup out of the portal. Let's bring this window back up. And the guys on the right hand side from Jackson Arnold, Horatio Fields, Ashton Daniels, Eric Singleton Jr., Darrell Robinson, Xavier Chaplin, and Mason Murphy were the guys that Auburn picked up out of the transfer portal. They are now Auburn Tigers. The only one who won't be here in spring or for spring ball will be Ashton Daniels, correct? Ike,
Mm-hmm.
he will be enrolling after spring,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. But everyone else is expected to be at Auburn. Your thoughts in terms of the biggest pickup out of the portal? Some people argue Jackson Arnold. Some people say Eric Singleton. But what say you, Ike?
And apologies to him. I left Preston Murray off of this, the tight end, or Murphy,
Yes,
excuse me, off of this, the tight end that was acquired. But I think the biggest,
Preston
so
Howard. Preston Howard. Yeah.
Preston Howard, excuse me. I'm thinking Mason Murphy, and I'm just putting names together now. I think the biggest. It's difficult for me because it's easy to say quarterback because you absolutely needed a quarterback. I think because the jury's still out on how good Jackson Arnold can be, I'm not going to say Jackson Arnold. I don't know that the biggest need was wide receiver, though I think the biggest acquisition as far as name is concerned and what he was in the portal is Eric Singleton Jr. So I'm not going to say Eric Singleton Jr. I am, however, going to say that I think Xavier Chaplin, the tackle from Virginia Tech, and what he means to so much of how this offense can be good and how porous the depth and the quality of play had been for the tackle position at Auburn, really the last few seasons, not just last year. Getting a quality guy who has power forward experience and can hopefully solidify that spot to me, because that means your quarterback can be this a little bit less perfect when you're blocking better. That means your run game can be a little bit more effective when you feel like you don't have to get the ball out in 0.2 seconds or there's immediate pressure on passing downs. And now teams have to play you differently. They've got to scheme differently. If you can block it better, it allows you to do other things in your offense better. So I'm going to go with a guy who I think is a plug and play tackle as the most effective guy or the most important acquisition during this offseason on the offensive side from the transfer portal.
Basically, you just took my answer.
Mm.
I have to agree 100%. Xavier Chaplin, this isn't a guy who played part time at the
Right.
tackle position. He played all 12 games for Virginia Tech, a total of 607 snaps. Ike graded out at nearly a 75 in terms of pass blocking. Not bad. Run blocking was a 72.4. This is a guy who's played a lot at that position. So when you say experience, no, he has clear experience at the P4 level. And allow uh it does allow I'm blanking out, not Percy Lewis, but the Wade. It allows
Mhm.
Wade to slide down and actually play the guard position instead of him playing out in a tackle space, a position they probably did not want him to play.
Right.
Now you're feeling a lot more comfortable on the left side of the offensive line while bringing in a new QB who, let's just face it, he was running for his life a
Mhm.
lot at Oklahoma because of the issues up front. So for him to have a sense of security with an experienced left tackle protecting his blind side, that helps.
Right.
as he's beginning to get familiar with Hugh Freeze's offense. So to me, I think with all of the important pieces that you did need in QB, having a left tackle to ensure that this QB can settle into the offense, assuming he lives up to the expectations of what we brought him in to do, this was the biggest pickup in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Um,
it's hard to argue otherwise. Again, I understand from you need a quarterback, and Jackson Arnold's a 5-star and all that kind of thing, why
yeah,
Jackson Arnold would be the first name on a lot of people's list. And I understand the amount of attention a guy like Eric Singleton brings because of who he was as far as his profile is concerned, in the portal, and how much he was coveted, right? Like, I understand how you could get there from that standpoint. But for me, it's going to be that's been such a position of need for Auburn for so long, and you thought you had it last year with Percy Lewis, and you end up not getting that. That it's
yeah.
like, yo, we got to get this one right. We got to get this one right.
Mason Murphy is right tackle.
Hmm.
And again, we can talk a little bit more about more in depth about the right tackle position because again, the new JUCO transfer ruling may play a factor into that, Ike. But your thoughts on Mason Murphy in terms of being brought in to play the other tackle spot and what the competition could potentially look like in the spring.
Yeah, I think it's important, because he is going to be a guy that again allows people to play. Like, it actually underscores even more why Chaplin is important, because Murphy played a little bit at the opposite tackle position at USC, and his numbers weren't as good when he
Mhm.
moved over there. So it allows him to play at a more natural spot. So you have two guys at tackle spots that are naturally where they need to be, right? And it allows a good, experienced person in your offense in Dylan Wade who can show them how to play that position because he's played it in this offense, but also be there as an interior guy that you need to be. It just does so much to have true tackles out there so guys can play in their more natural positions, a guy like Dylan Wade. So he's an important pickup from that standpoint as well. Um, again, I don't know that you're able to underscore how important the trenches are in a successful Power Four program, particularly an SEC program. You've got to be able to be sound up front, and you've
Mhm.
got to have more guys that you can rotate there, right? And this allows for Dylan Wade to still be a swing guy who, if you need to move him out there, you can. It gives you another year to hopefully develop a guy like Tyler Johnson out there on the outside. And you've got some other guys that haven't seen a lot of playing time, but it gives them more time to develop because offensive line is such a developmental position. So you can solidify for the now, develop for the future, and still hopefully have good outcomes on the field for all of those things.
Uh, Auburn is in Keandre Lambert Smith, who obviously is out of eligibility at this point, had a monster senior season. Um, Played a ton of snaps, 623 snaps, 378 in terms of passing snaps. That has to be replaced, right?
Mhm.
And he played particularly on the outside, but you're bringing in a guy, Horatio Fields, who played 671 snaps of his own, total 404 passing snaps. This guy has, again, a lot of experience at the P4 level, can play outside. How do you think he factors in? Do you see Singleton actually playing true to the slot, or do you see him playing more of that Keandre Lambert Smith role that we saw him play last year?
I think that, and I talked a little bit about this. I think it's out pod only right now, and maybe put a little snippet out there on social media. I had a chance to talk to Garrett Chapman, who is the 247 Sports guy who covers Georgia Tech for 247, about kind of who he is, Eric Singleton, as a player. And from the description of that and what I've looked at and some of the stuff I did in my film review, um, he fits more of a Malcolm Simmons type of athlete than he does a Keandre Lambert Smith. Now, he's sure-handed and he can go and, catch it outside of his frame, all of that kind of stuff. But I think he is more straight line speed and quickness than he is just like Lambert Smith he was truly a just put me on the field anywhere kind of guy. And though Eric Singleton can play the outside, I think he is more of a slot guy than he is a just play me anywhere kind of guy. And that is kind of what I see in Malcolm Simmons as well. He fits more in the slot because of just what his abilities are, particularly his size and really what he does from a speed perspective. So I think he will play more slot receiver. And so it's going to be interesting to see what the distribution of snaps are going to be with those three guys as they're slated right now. Speaking of Eric Singleton, Malcolm Simmons, and Bryce Cain. But that's where I see that being a thing for him.
And one of the things we talked about before, Ike, is he wasn't mentioned on the graphic, but we talked about the pickup of Preston Howard.
Mhm.
Auburn only lost one tight end to the transfer portal, but lost two tight ends in terms of eligibility from this year's team. So you're down tight ends. Obviously, you're bringing in two from the high school ranks, but the idea you have to wonder is, while you are going to be using tight ends, they're going to still factor into the offense. Are we going to see a lot more four wide receiver sets when you have guys like Malcolm Simmons and Eric Singleton Jr. On your team now? And obviously, I think Jackson Arnold plays a big factor into this, right?
Right.
In terms of how much he progresses. But it seems to me is that we're beginning to lean more and depend more on the wide receiver core, as opposed to seeing a lot of the 12 personnel we've seen the first 2 years under Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things, and this is actually going to go back to why the acquisition of these tackles are important.
Yeah.
I think the big reason why Coach Freeze and this offensive staff leaned into putting more tight ends on the field was because they weren't blocking very well on the outside, right? And so if you don't feel confident in being able to do 5-man protecting, we're going to go 4 wide and be able to block it up well enough to get the ball out, then you're going to have to go bring in an extra tight end. If your running backs aren't blocking well and picking up blitz protections well, you need an additional tight end in there to be able to solidify what you mean. So I hope that Auburn can get into that place where you're putting all of these dynamic pass catching talents out there on the field together and allowing them all to be threats to the defense. But there's a couple of things that have to happen. You got to block well as a receiver, right? So you have to have receivers that are willing to be physical. That's another thing that he's talked about talking to Garrett Chapman. He said that, he's a willing blocker as well. So he can go out there and he'll do the things necessary to get you. And he had to in that Georgia Tech system, right? Georgia Tech is a team that was going to run the ball a bunch, and they were going to run their quarterback. So as a wide receiver, you needed to be able to go out there and block. So it's not something that he's not accustomed to doing, is going out there and being a blocker. But you need willing blockers from your receivers to be able to run some of that wide stuff. If you're going to run a speed sweep with, let's just say, Malcolm Simmons and Singleton are out there on the field at the same time, and they're on opposite sides of the formation, but we're going to run a speed sweep going left to right with Malcolm Simmons towards Singleton's side of the field. Singleton needs to be able to block out there on the outside if it's going to work, right? Whether that is a crack block coming back in to, get an interior linebacker defensive end, or your head up blocking with a cornerback DB or whatever over the top. You have to be able to do that in order for that play to be effective, right?
Right.
Same thing going the opposite direction if you're going to run it with Singleton. You need either Malcolm Simmons has to be a big enough threat deep where you're going to run a guy off with him, or he needs to be able to block there. So you have to have all of those elements working well for the plays to work properly. And so, again, the acquisition of those tackles allows you to feel more confident that we can spread it out. They can't just stack the box against us. So if we're going to go 6-on-6 where, the 5 offensive linemen plus my running back, and they're going to bring a 6-man pressure, can I block it with that? Or do I have to now go bring a tight end in the game just to go take a deep shot because we can't block it up well enough to let the route develop? So all of that stuff matters, man. And the way that Coach Hugh Freeze wants to run tempo, he doesn't need to be package specific to run a bunch of different types of stuff. He needs to be able to say, all right, if we're going to go 4 wide, I can run whatever I need to out of this 4 wide because all of my receivers can block for my speed sweep stuff. I have multiple guys I can throw bubble screens to. I've got guys I can dial up deep shots with because we can protect it quickly. We can run out of this formation as well. I can't run tempo if I got to change personnel every time I want to do something different.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see if we'll see a lot more of 10 personnel or even 0 personnel moving. Well, we saw some of it this past year when Hugh Freeze really tried to get into more of his offense. But again, I think with better personnel up front, some of the receivers, and let's see how this QB position shakes out in the spring. Maybe we'll see a lot more of that, especially when he's running tempo. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for that. Let's get to some of you guys' comments before we get out of here. Brad Brownie says, I think those comments are more about confidence in Spavital's versus an indictment against Freeze. Who knows? Who knows? You know, it could be both, right? It really could be both. Who knows?
You don't know. So
It
I mean,
could be both. Who
because
knows?
it's left up to interpretation. Again, that requires you. I was literally just having this conversation with someone about this concept in general. Is when something's left up to interpretation, you start to fill in those blanks based upon all of the people involved in that scenario, right? So if you and I are the only people on the show today, right? And somebody was like, "Ah, man, the war report said something stupid again." Immediately, without people watching, they're going to think Mike G said something crazy, right? Mike's not even on the show, but their natural assumption is Mike G said something crazy. What did Mike say now, right? But we're the only people there. But all they said was, war report's at it again, because I guarantee you the last person they're going to say is, man, Caesar said something crazy out there today. The last person they're going to think Mike, then they probably maybe say me, and then B Will, because he's not here as much. But the last person out of it, but what if you were the person who said something crazy?
It was
because
me.
Of the limit of the information that's there, people fill in the blanks in their mind with whatever preconceived notion they have. So in the Walker White situation,
and I think to your point, biases begin to set in. So if you already are frustrated with, then it's obviously a shot at Hugh Freeze.
Yeah, if you didn't like how Hugh Freeze handled the quarterback situation, you were immediately going to go to, dang, Coach Freeze wasn't being clear with it. That's what the problem is. If you trusted Coach Freeze and you didn't like the move of Walker White going to the portal, man, he's just saying that he didn't want, because look at what blah, blah, blah said, man. And that it's your perspective is going to color any gray area in. If it's gray there, I'm going to color it with my perspective regardless. And again, somebody's right, but I don't know. And actually, I probably do know enough to have a very educated guess about that. But again, my job here is not to put words in that young man's mouth. If he wanted to say that, he could have. He could have very specifically said it.
I want to get to this comment and ask you 2 questions. One question I want to ask, because I wasn't on the show that day when you, Mike, and B was, and y'all may have talked about it, but my question would have been, how does winning and losing factor into these types of decisions? Because if you're winning games, I'm a lot more patient with the plan, right? Even if you do it, an argument could be made, you're not desperate for a Jackson Arnold. If you're winning games, you should have been winning throughout the first 2 years, right? You can actually trust your development plan with your kids out of high school because, okay, we won 7 games in year 1. We won 8 games in year 2. Okay, this program is trending in the right direction. So it's almost like what Hugh Freeze did in year 2. I don't feel pressure to have to go get a QB. You still don't feel that pressure in year 3 because the trajectory is apparent, right?
Yeah.
And I think the kids out of high school are more apt to trust what you're doing. But when you're desperate to get a winning season in year 3, that throws off the calculus of everything.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a couple of things about that. I don't know. I hate giving disclaimers. I would love to be able to just say what I need to say and people not take it out of context, but I will give a disclaimer here. What I'm about to say is not a reflection on how well I feel like Peyton Thorne played at Auburn or how good he was not good. But the Peyton Thorne experiment in year one set the entire process back. It just did, because it didn't go as well as it needed to for whatever reason. Like, I don't really care at this point today, December 29th, 2024, what the reasonings were that year one Peyton Thorne didn't go well and the offense looked so inept. We can talk about all the reasons why. We've litigated that over and over again. Don't really care. The point is, it didn't work, and it set the entire thing back really a year away from where it needed to be. Because what was supposed to happen is Peyton Thorne comes in 1 year, balls out, and they get another quarterback who was already on the roster, whether that be Robbie Ashford, whether that had been Hank Brown, whether that had been Holden Geriner, ready to be the heir apparent that next season. And then in year two, it was going to be a prove it year for one of those guys while you're preparing Walker White to be the heir apparent on the throne, right? You were going to do well enough with this guy. It didn't even have to be 10 wins, but get you 7, maybe 8 wins in that first year, and you show competency on offense. And that allows you to continue to sign quarterback prospects in the future, seeing the proof of concept in year one. That did not happen. Wasn't even close to what happened.
Right.
And because it didn't go remotely that direction, you're left in year two to run it back with Peyton Thorne, and now you're a year behind plan. And now everybody's uncertain because you don't have another year of Peyton Thorne after this year. You got to go somewhere else. And then what you just said, wins and losses don't go your direction in year two. The offense looks better by the numbers.
Yeah.
But the wins and losses don't go in the right direction. So now it's like, well, we fixed the offense a little bit, but we're not winning games. So do I trust this coaching staff to be able to not just get me good numbers, but put me in a winning scenario? Because I don't like losing. And that makes everybody a little more impatient and a little more on edge. And now, not only are we not winning games, and you can point to the decisions of the coaching staff and the decisions of whether that's in game or who to play as reasonings for that. And so my trust in what you've been telling me is the plan is eroding because that plan ain't working.
Right.
Every time you lay a plan out to me, it don't go the way you said it was going to go. And every time we have a conversation, you're having to pivot to some new plan and it's like, bro, like, I'm tired of new plans. Can we just stick with the plan that we had? Or how do I trust the plan that you have will actually work? Because the last ones you had ain't worked so well.
Right.
So everybody's a little bit more on edge. So it becomes this cluster, man, and the frustration boils over into the locker room, and then fans get frustrated and they start trying to put their feelings on what young men should do with their life. As far as, man, I get as far away from this program as possible. And it's like, yo, man, come on, dog. Like, craziness.
Sly King asked, would you agree that QB development at Auburn has been subpar for some time?
Yes. Yeah, I'd agree that it's been subpar.
I'm surprised you hesitated.
Well, so I don't even think you need to put at Auburn in there. I think QB development in college football has been subpar for a lot. Like, there are very few programs who do this well. It just are.
Yeah.
So I just and I think that product is playing out in the quality of NFL quarterbacks that are making it to the league. There's no reason why you have so few guys in second and third years that are actually playing. Why is that? Because they ain't getting developed in college. That's not an Auburn problem. That is a college football issue. And there's a lot of reasons for it, but it is an issue in college football right now. And it's not unique to the quarterback position. It's happening all over, and it's happening in basket. Collegiate programs are doing such a poor job right now of developing talent, and it's making the pro product unwatchable across the board in a lot of professional sports.
I think you're seeing a lot of system coaches.
Yeah, for sure.
There are a lot of system coaches at the college level Guys who, and I'm not going to name names,
Yeah.
right? But these guys have built up an amazing reputation based on the fact that their offense put up a lot of
That
points.
listen, Lawrence Robinson. People need to say what they mean by QB development. Some QBs are developed within a scheme and they run that scheme well. Yes.
It's the system. It's the system, really, what it is. Because
The
what
the
happens if
nuance
you
of this
get
conversation is bigger than it's not that's not a uniquely Auburn problem. It is and but you know what? That goes back to with the impatience that happens with having coaches that can develop a system, right? Because you want to have a guy that comes in and wins immediately. And well, we got the transfer portal. Transfer portal doesn't solve chemistry issues. It can get you talent, but it
sure,
doesn't mean you get the chemistry necessary to have longevity in developing people along in your system that allows you to be more successful year over year while maintaining all the pieces around a quarterback it's a huge issue, but it goes back to the impatience with the process that a lot of programs have with allowing coaches to be fully funded the way that they need to be to go out and compete for talent and then having the patience to allow that talent to develop within that system. It just
right,
doesn't happen.
right, right. Uh, let's see here. Actually, let's go ahead and take a break. Let's take a break. And let's come back, read some more of your comments, and let's talk the defensive side of the ball.
This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelikaRageroom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com.
As always, thank you to those members out there that are doing what they need to do to help support what we have going on with the War Report. Green Name Gang, you are the lifeblood of this channel. We could not do a fraction of the things that we do with this channel without you all. And thank y'all so much. I'm trying to continue to deliver great content for you all behind the paywall. If you want to take a peek, take a chance on it for 1 month, $3.99, supporter level $5.99, patron level. Come in that little area and have fun, man. We're going to have some fun back there talking about whatever, if it's office hours, digging more specifically into film, if we're doing film review stuff. And, it's a good time. If you are a member and you want to gift a membership, you can do that right now, and somebody will get a free month of membership on you. I was going to make the most lewd Mike G is transition into this joy mode thing. I'm going to not do that right now and just say, if you are having, if you want to have some fun during the holiday season, New Year's Eve is upon us, and maybe you need a good left tackle to support what you want to do from a scoring perspective. Joy mode can be your offensive line, supplying you all of the necessary things to help you score and be the champion that you want to be. Joy Mode, try joymode.com. Use 20% off or get 20% off plus free shipping when you use code REPORT and you go over there to Joy Mode. And I am sure that the folks over there will appreciate you patronizing them in that way. Thank you to all of you who continue to support us by supporting the people who support us.
Have used the analogy of kicking through the uprights to score. Joy Mode can help you do that, but that's free. That you guys can use that on.
When we talk about kicker next time, I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna use that segue.
Yeah, man. You're welcome. That's free. Legit says, did y'all see the message board genius tweet about an insider claiming Auburn is cheating by paying players to sign?
In the era of NIL, a team is now cheating by paying them to sign. Okay, sure, whatever.
Yeah,
that's probably one of the more ridiculous things that somebody has said recently, but okay.
But it's why I made message board genius as well. That's also another reason. But Stephen Neely, with the $2 super chat, appreciate it, says, so what happens if year one under Jackson Arnold is also a miss?
I mean, then you're going to be having a conversation about the head coach at that point in time, because he's the one making the decisions on who to play, who to start, all that sort
what's
of stuff.
Auburn's record?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's a pretty self-evident thing. If it doesn't work in year 3 and you've now pivoted to another quarterback that's not working, and you stick with that quarterback and he's not working for you, then it's time to look at the guy making those decisions.
Yeah, because it's not like he's missing on the guys. Well, I mean, clearly he's getting the people he wants at this
Yeah.
point at the QB position.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like he missed this portal window in terms of QB. So you would think that this should work for him. So if it doesn't, yes, we're having a Hugh Freeze conversation at the end of the year. Even if the record somehow magically is improved, we're
Right.
having a conversation about Hugh Freeze, because you're talking about 3 straight years where the offense is, while it improved under year 2, it's been turbulent, right?
Right.
Year 1 was a mess. Year 2 was an improvement. Year 3 was a regression. Hugh Freeze we're having a Hugh Freeze problem and an issue.
Right.
Ant Robinson says, I think me and TK statements was the dagger for Walker White. What statements?
Yeah, I must have missed what it was.
Okay.
Maybe about the quarterback rotation, not rotation, excuse me, but like going
the
back.
handling of
Hank Brown. Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps. Marshall Jones says, this is why I don't believe in stacking QB recruiting anymore.
I think you have to do it, and even though it's not a sustainable thing, because injuries are still going to happen, right? And so you've got to figure out how to get multiple guys that you feel like are at least talented enough to be your guy in the room. But it also means that you probably don't need to fall in love with the potential of a guy that's the number 3 guy on your roster, because you may never see him play.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, winning plays an integral part in this. Like, guys are more apt to wait their turn if you're winning game. If you're losing, no. It's going to be difficult to stack that room. It's going to be very difficult to stack that room. But we've seen in places like Georgia, even though there has been some attrition with Georgia, some guys have left to go play elsewhere. Guys are more apt to wait when you're competing for SEC championships and playoff spots year in and year out, and your offense appears to be functioning at a level that's causing you to win games. Players are more apt to be more patient. We've seen it at Bama, we've seen it at Georgia, we're seeing it at some of your programs that are having a lot of success. So Nina just gifted a Warport membership. Thank you. So Nina, appreciate you.
I think I just saw Marshall say he was the guy that was the recipient of that. So shout out to you, Marshall, for getting back in the green name.
Word. Von Nigel says, you guys may have already talked about it, but seeing rumors of Squirrel White potentially to Auburn online, do you guys think he would be a good fit in the wide receiver room?
He's going to be another guy that would be a slot guy. And I don't know how you convince a guy who was an SEC starter to come into a stacked room at slot.
Yeah. That's tough.
Without pissing off Bryce Kane.
Right. Ron Robinson says, you can't do this both ways. Go the 1-year portal mode or build through high school route. Fans don't know what they want and how they want it.
I mean, I think this whole portal conversation to me is, and I've talked about this before, and if it were different people doing this, I could understand the duality that exists out there. But it's some of the exact same people who say there's no loyalty for these young men. They come in here, and if they're not playing, they want to get out of the transfer portal. The transfer portal and NIL is ruining college football, right? some of those exact same people, not different people, exact same people are also saying, pay him whatever he needs to get him in here. We need that guy right now to fill this need. And saying subsequently, oh, I'm so glad such and such transferred off of our team. Do you like transfer portal and NIL or do you not? It's ruining college football when it takes guys off of your team you didn't expect to transfer. And it's the best thing ever when you bring in guys that you're excited about. Make up your mind.
The portal giveth and the portal taketh.
It's either a good thing or it's not. And the answer is it's neither. It just is.
It's just different. It's just different.
Like the transfer portal and NIL are not the problem. They're not. They are a byproduct of a larger issue that we've just talked about with the way college football has been forever. And now players have an actual say in some of this stuff. They're not just getting processed anymore. And
right
now they get a chance to say, I don't like how this is going. I'm out of here. And before that was all up to the coach, or I'm stuck here. Right. And I'm not going to get a chance to do anything. And oh, by the way, the guy who I trusted with my development in my collegiate career just took a job somewhere else. So now I just got to be here on the bench with a new coach who don't have the first clue how to use me because he is a system coach and I don't fit his system. I just got to sit here and waste eligibility. Right. It's not fair. So either you if it's not, and it's not ever going to be fair. There's always going to be a thing wrong with the new thing because that's just kind of the way life works. And so I think sometimes people complain for the sake of complaining, but it gets confusing when you're cheering for the one thing, but then being mad at the thing that produced the thing you just cheered for and saying, what are we doing? I'm so glad such and such transfer. Get him up off of my team. I thought you hated the transfer portal.
Yeah. So Nina says, if you're not in the green name gang, what you doing?
What are you doing? I agree.
So Nina with the word from God on Sunday. Thank you for that. Let's talk. Are we ready to talk defense, man?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Hopefully we got everyone accounted for here, but
I hope I got it. If I didn't, then apologies.
Yeah, it is what it is. We're human. We obviously Auburn took in less than who exited, but Keontae Scott, CJ Johnson, DJ Reed, Antonio Kite, Laquan Robinson, Gage Keys, TJ Lindsey, Caleb Wooden, all have departed the program. And coming in is on the defensive side.
Wow,
obviously, there was a heavy emphasis.
Yeah, I know exactly where it came from. That's crazy.
That's funny. Tay Seymour from Georgia Tech, Dallas Walker, Rayon Strader from Maryland, and where did Xavier Atkins come in? LSU, that's right, the linebacker there. Yeah. Your thoughts about, any surprises for you on the defensive side of the ball? I think for me, TJ Lindsey would have to be perhaps one of the big surprises. Caleb Wooden surprised me as well in the secondary, but TJ Lindsey surprised me again because of the youth, the opportunity to compete going into year 2. I didn't expect much in year 1 from him, but thought he would be one of the guys competing for some playing time in year 2. But your thoughts?
I think the only surprising one on here for me was Caleb Wooden. And again, he's one of those guys who was surprising. I was like, oh, he had more eligibility left. I didn't know. But I think as you're getting all of this young talent in, I think that was more of a handwriting on the wall thing of like, some of these young guys are going to come take these snaps, and I got 1 year left to prove it somewhere. Let me go somewhere and go play. So love that decision for him. Same thing with Keontae Scott. I think it just at some point in time, he's like, I think he had closed the Auburn chapter in his mind up until this whole JUCO additional eligibility thing popped up. And he was like, okay, well, I know my spot is about to get taken by somebody. Let me go find some place that's going to be a good fit for me. And I think that's a good decision for him. Same thing with DJ Johnson. Antonio Kite was probably just a never should have been on this team guy.
Right.
Gage Keys, another one, probably just never was a good fit, and he went right back to the school he transferred from in the first place. So he probably should have stayed there the entire time. DJ Reed never saw his way onto the field. Made a lot of sense. He was a guy who I anticipated leaving.
Yeah.
But TJ Lindsey was the other one that you brought up, and he was going to be an interesting one because I think he had a place on this team, but that position where he was slotted in as a defensive end / D tackle was so stacked that I don't know that there were enough snaps going to be available for everybody to stay satisfied with. And I think he was a guy who thought he was going to play as a true freshman and never really got opportunities to do that. And so he's another guy where he didn't openly say that. Maybe he didn't trust the plan for how he was going to be out there and be able to contribute on a consistent basis. And so I understand the decision from TJ Lindsey in that regard as well. So I'm not necessarily shocked by Laquan Robinson. Shocked me a little bit. I thought he was going to be a guy that was going to play a lot this next season as a kind of hybrid linebacker guy. And so I didn't expect him to hit the portal. I thought he was going to be good with what the new role they were carving out for him was going to be. So his was a little more shocking for me.
I wasn't really shocked with him. I thought I was going to see more of him this past year, like more of him on the field in some capacity. And I think when I didn't see that, I kind of felt like he could have left for the portal. Let's talk real quick about who Auburn has coming in. Your thoughts on the haul here? I know you may have talked about it. I think one of the big impressive pickups has been the kid from Maryland, I believe. People talked about him. I think he's coming in to play corner. Is it corner?
I think he's going to be he might be a safety. Hold on, let me make sure. Schrader.
I know Seymour was a safety.
Let me not lie to y'all. He is. Yeah, Seymour is listed as a safety. Where is Schrader on this list? Hold on. Yeah, he's a corner. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He definitely is a corner. I'm tripping. Yeah. It's interesting, right? Because I feel like the cornerback position is going to be a pretty heavily contested situation, right? So I don't know whether or not he's going to have. Sorry about that. Hit the wrong thing. Where do the snaps come from for him? Like whose snaps is he taking? K.N. Lee is going to be there. Jay Crawford's going to be there. I think this is more of a security blanket in case those two guys in Champ Anthony and Tyler Scott, you don't know, they're going to be back from injury from a timetable standpoint, hopefully, but where are they going to be in their readiness to get back out there and play? And so that's more of a security thing. So I don't know. And you're correct. It's not Maryland, it's Miami of Ohio. I had that wrong on the graphic. I don't know what that's going to be yet. And it's going to be interesting because he is a guy who performed well where he was, but he's also a guy who's at Miami of Ohio, right? So like, how does that translate to a Power 4? He's a player though. He's an absolute player. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see how many snaps he get because again, when you get the opportunity in the transfer portal coming from a place like Miami of Ohio, and you can go to a lot of different places, you want to be able to play. And is he going to be fine with being in the too deep? As long as, hey, look, I'm a play away from being the guy. Are they going to rotate? Like, I don't know what the conversation was around how he's going to get playing time. So I think the spring is going to be super interesting for guys like him.
Yeah, indeed. And I think you have an embarrassment of riches if the guys who were injured last year, Scott, Champ Anthony, do come back and are able to contribute just like they were. You have an embarrassment of riches there, right? Obviously, he gives you something to get through spring. As those guys are beginning to heal up, you do want to have some depth there. Some guys you can depend on. So I am curious to see how he acclimates to P4 level competition and if he makes some noise. What about the linebacker from LSU?
He didn't play a lot last season, and so from a talent perspective, I think he's good. I think he's a good depth piece and could be, great. But you don't really know yet because he hasn't played very much.
Yeah.
So how quickly he gets acclimated to what they're asking him to do, and being able to make that transition over to the new scheme is going to be a thing for him. I'm very interested to see how this linebacker room evolves this next year, for sure. Because there's a lot of youth in that linebacker room, talented guys, but a lot of young guys that are going to really have to just come in and play well to solidify what they want to do, because that linebacker position is so crucial.
Hey, DJ Durkin. Now listen, he made a statement in year one. This is his position that he coaches. I'm willing to see. I'm ready to see some guys emerge.
Yeah.
Some of these kids he even brought in himself, recruited. So it's not like these guys are foreign to him. So I'm excited to see who emerges. This is what he does. This is what he's cut his teeth on, his linebacker play. So I'm curious to see who are some of the new names. Obviously, we had some. The DeMarcus Riddick was a name who it was. I enjoyed seeing him emerge in his freshman year, but there's some other guys just as talented who are brought in with him. I'm ready to see them take a step forward this spring and going into fall. So eager to see that. Any positions that you are concerned about, Ike, that Auburn needs to address? Obviously, you have the QB position, because going into spring, you only have 2 QBs on scholarship.
Right.
So obviously you need a third QB unless you're just going to work with a walk-on with the 3s.
Yeah. I mean,
Sam Jackson's gone, so it's not like you can ask him to spot you for spring. So like I would imagine you would want to have a third QB to run with the third team.
Yeah, I mean, just from a body's perspective, you need someone else there in that quarterback room for sure. So it's going to be interesting to see how they decide to approach that for spring football. Again, I already talked about the youth in the linebacker room, and it's going to be interesting for me to see who emerges kind of as a leader there. Everywhere else, I think you're okay. I mean, you're young in your tight end room, really.
Mm-hmm.
You got the one guy as a transfer, and then you're going to get what's my guy's name that's coming back from the injury?
From which position?
Frazier. Brandon Frazier is going to be back in your tight end room as a 6th-year senior, right? So you have a guy with some talent and some experience in your program and with your culture that can be kind of a leader in the locker room and hopefully a good ball player on the field for you. But everywhere else, man, like it honestly feels until we see him play, it feels like Auburn is stacked everywhere else.
Do you think we'll truly have a running back by committee under Hugh Freeze? Because I am surprised Cobb stayed. So I saw some of you guys in the comments mention Cobb when we talked about names that were thrown out for the portal.
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a very important spring for that running back room. Because I think we survived the first portal window, and depending on how they handle spring, I don't think we survived the second portal window with running backs. That's just a guess, but I'm curious to see how they handle the carries with that running back room. Your thoughts, man?
I think it's difficult to gauge that during the spring because quarterback run is not going to be a big portion of what you're trying to do, and Jackson Arnold is going to be a runner, right? And so, yeah, it's going to look like you're getting a bunch of handoffs, right? But some of those might not actually be handoffs when the real game comes. Right. And how they decide to use guys is going to be, I think, instrumental in not just snap distribution, but just like ways they're going to get the ball to the running back. Are you going to see more running back screens? Are you going to see them split the running back out as a slot receiver sometimes? And you're going to motion from, are you going to run more 2-back sets and have more of like, I think those types of things are going to be important to whether or not Cobb decides to stay, and if somebody jumps, DA for running back one, does he say, all right, well, hey, I thought this was going to be my year. It doesn't look like it's moving that direction. You know what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of things that could change the reality for today. What would be that post spring reality? But yeah, the running back is a position I am very eager. I was going to be very eager to watch the quarterback competition. It's lost a lot of luster now that Walker White has exited the room, and you only have two guys there that could legitimately even compete. And Deuce Knight's not really competing for QB1. He's Jackson Arnold's going to have to fumble that, which he had a fumbling issue. So maybe he actually does. I don't know. We'll see. But
Good God.
but yeah, man, the running back competition is going to be an interesting one. I think the competition at wide receiver is a little bit more interesting now, of like who's going to get the snaps and how they're going to be utilized and how they're going to line them up and all that kind of thing. I'm eager to see how that.
I'm looking at a Horatio Fields Perry Thompson battle.
Yeah,
I'm curious to see how that plays out. Obviously, Cam Coleman is lined up as one of your starting receivers, but I'm curious about that other
Eric Singleton, like where and how they're going to use him, and what does that mean for Malcolm Simmons, Bryce Kane, and what their distribution of snaps is going to be.
Yeah.
Special teams, right? Like you saw Malcolm Simmons last year turn into your punt returner. Is he going to still be the guy back there? Are one of those other guys going to get an opportunity at punt returner / kick returner? There's some questions out there about how you're going to utilize this. What now, again, for me, feels like a wealth of talent at a lot of your skill positions and a lot of really, really good defensive players that are going to be battling for snaps over on the other side of the football, and who emerges in the two deep from that, because you got a lot of young guys that are going to be really good. How quickly are they going to be able to see the field? Your interior offensive lineman battle is going to be interesting. Like Jeremiah Wright, if he's going to be back on this team, and Dylan Waiter is going to be back, that means you got another year where you don't get to see Dre out there on the field. Dre Carter.
Yeah.
Who your starting center is going to be presumptively, and you just picked up 2 tackles. So everybody else still got to wait their turn there on the offensive line. Do some of those guys say, hey, I'm not even in the 2 deep, I'm out of here? You know what I'm saying? Like, but again, these are good problems to have, because you feel good about who the first layer of that is going to be, and hopefully the patience of everybody at that second layer. But as you start to get into that depth, do some of those guys lose their patience, and now you've got to go refill a bunch of people and figure out how to fill in with guys out there in the transfer portal or in that second window.
Yeah. All right, let's get to some of the comments here. We've got just a few. Exclusive TV with the 199 super chat says, we don't need no more receivers.
I don't disagree with this. I think you've got enough guys. Like we just rattled off. But you talk about Cam Coleman, Perry Thompson, Bryce Kane, Malcolm Simmons, Eric Singleton Jr., Horatio Fields, and the Smith brothers that you brought in as freshmen, and Sam Turner as a freshman. You've got enough. Like you can't put more than 5 receivers on the field at a time, and you're not going to run 5 receivers all the time.
You gotta like what Auburn has done with this receiver room in 3 years. It's been impressive. It's been impressive. No, I agree. It's crazy that we're like, we don't need no more receivers now. When a year or 2 ago we were like, we need receivers.
We need all the receivers. Yeah. I hate our receiver. That was one of the biggest listen, say what you want to about Hugh Freeze. The only promises he made out the gate was, I turn teams around quickly. And when he said quickly, he meant 3 to 4 years. Let's be clear, because he was very specific about that in a later press conference. He was like, man, it's going to take a couple of years to really turn this roster over. And he said that we do well with the quarterback position. Well, the quarterback position one ain't been so well, but his time frame of refreshing this roster from a talent perspective is right on track.
Yeah,
he has absolutely taken the average skill, star rating, whatever, of this entire roster up a notch in these 2 years. He absolutely has.
It was right outside 15 or 15 for blue chip ratio. I'm pretty sure we're we're firmly entrenched in the top 15 now,
Yeah.
like with the talent that he's
Probably
brought
top
in.
10, right? Like I'd
Yeah,
wager to say you're probably top 10 at this point in time. But
yeah,
again, that was his laser focus. And he knew this was going to be his prove it year because he was going to have enough talent where he could go out there and really turn up.
yeah.
And again, you can say what you want to about anything else that's happened on the field, and he did that. He absolutely did that.
I think that's why a larger, because again, DJ Durkin, uh, aside from some collapse in year 2 with DJ Durkin, you got your defensive coordinator. If you're not showing improving in year 3, we are having a Hugh Freeze conversation, because what excuses do you have? Obviously, injuries can happen in football and that can decimate. We saw what happened in Oklahoma, right, on the offensive side of the ball. So again, we don't know what's going to happen, but with the talent that he's stacked, he can't blame it on talent in year 3.
Oh yeah, now the talent excuse is officially out the window, right? Like now you've got way too many talented players now to say that there's not going to be very many rosters that are more talented than Auburn this year. Not
Yeah.
very many. It's going to be a couple of them.
Yeah.
But I'm saying even at depth, there's enough talent on this roster where that should not be a conversation we're having.
Correct.
So now it's squarely focused on how well you actually are coaching these guys and putting them in position to make the plays. And then it should be a clear matter of execution at that point in time. It should be very clear. I put them in position. We've got the talent to do it. Can we get it done on the field? And if we're not, do I see a process of you tweaking and improving that as the year goes along? It's going to be super clear this year.
Yeah. Yeah. Miller Howes says, I wonder if Woodyard stays after spring.
I would assume he's got the inside track to starting right now.
So he's been one of those guys who's just been waiting, because there's been guys in front of him and those guys are gone.
Yeah.
Right. Like this.
And he's been steadily improved. Like he came back in year 2. He had transformed his body and he looked like a different player out there during last spring.
Got a lot of snaps last year too.
Right. So he now has the body necessary to be the kind of player that DJ Durkin needs to be, and another year of experience in that system. You've got to assume he's going to be the guy. And if he's not the guy exiting spring, then he needs to look at, all right, well, I don't know if he don't do it this spring,
now or never.
I don't know when you ever gonna do it, my guy. Because this is you're one of the more, like, he's a redshirt sophomore right now, maybe like a junior,
I think now.
If it don't happen this year, it probably ain't gonna happen. So
yeah. Let's see here. Lawrence Robinson says, do we know if Henderson will be on campus for spring?
Henderson,
the running back, Alvin Henderson.
Oh, I think so. Yeah, I think he's a spring enrollee. I mean, he's gonna be here. Yeah. So, yeah.
All right. I think that's it, man.
Yeah, the only other thing we had talked about we were going to get to was the JUCO thing.
Yeah, we can. I don't know. You could probably do a show or a pod on that one.
Yeah, we can do something separate on that.
All right. Ike, take us away with some announcements, man, and let's get out of here.
Yes, indeed. As always, thank you to the Green Name Gang. You guys, again, help make sure that this channel continues. I did see your comment, and about you wanted to do some office hours. I am going to try to make that happen. I got a lot of work that I got to do on some film stuff. So we'll see if we can make that happen at some point this week. But go ahead and join the channel if you want to get in on this film review. Definitely got some of that coming up for you. If you are a member and you want to gift a membership, you can do that right now, and someone will get a free month of membership on you. Big shout out to the folks over at Los Amigos Mexican Restaurant. Some big SEC basketball games coming up here as we get into the new year. If you're looking for a place to go and watch the games, particularly those away games where you're not able to go to them, and you're in the Auburn area, USA Town Center 1220 Fox Run Ave is where you need to go, Suite 200 in Opelika, and you can watch the games there, get you some Mexican food, and enjoy the atmosphere out there. And shout out to the folks over at Rogue Shop. If all of this stuff has transfer portal window, a lot of stress about who's going to leave. All right, maybe some of that stress is alleviated right now, but you got anxiety about what we're going to do now with this talent. Rogue Shop maybe can have a place for you to go there. So go to rogueshop.com, use code REPORT when you do, get you 15% off at America's #1 online dispensary, which is the Rogue Shop. And then lastly, another big shout out to Golden's Cast Iron. Working out, grilling out, chilling out. Use code Get Your Weight Up for the weights, TWR for the fire pits and Kamado grills, and have a lasting experience with the folks at Golden's.
Indeed, indeed. Before you get out of here, please be sure to share this video. Use the at us and use the hashtag. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. You can find us on X, Instagram, even Facebook at The War Report. You can also find us on TikTok at TW Report. That's it for now, guys, but we will definitely be getting you some content throughout the week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. We got to figure out what we're going to do about the midweek report since New Year's Day. A lot of people going to be watching games and whatnot. We'll figure something out. We'll send out an announcement. Be on the lookout for that. Till then, enjoy the rest of your weekend. As always, War Eagle.
War Eagle.